Has Kamala Harris pretty much quit? I mean, is she throwing in the towel? Has she suspended her campaign 2 weeks out? Well, considering she tried to seal the deal yesterday using Liz Cheney to make her final arguments, that's kind of an indication. Plus, Donald Trump absolutely dominating with union voters, and Tim Walz, well, he knows who's to blame for that. Union members. Also, Ben Shapiro destroys libtard Hamas supporter at UCLA. I don't know why. I've just always wanted to do that because I love those headlines on YouTube. Ben Shapiro destroys. Anyway, it was really great. And you're going to see Ben Shapiro do just that coming up in just a moment. And I'm told it's Stephanie's birthday. So happy birthday, Stephanie. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Yeah, you betcha. Also, by the way, not only is Kamala Harris throwing in the towel here, and it seems pretty obvious that she's completely done. But how do you possibly follow up McDonald's gate? I mean, they're still talking about it. Day 3 of the McDonald's story. There's a thing in political media called earned media. Kamala Harris has raised like $1 billion. She can run ads anywhere she wants for as long as she wants. But at some point, it really doesn't matter, right? Donald Trump puts on an apron with his red tie and white dress shirt, and he goes and works the fry line. And that B-roll continues to play 3 days later for free. Earned media. Even the people who are screaming about him and are angry that he did that. And again, I don't understand anybody who's angry that Donald Trump decided to make French fries for people. But even the people who are angry, they still continue to play the video on their station. It's amazing. It's incredible to watch. People are going to be teaching classes about this in political science decades from now. And we're witnessing right here 2 weeks before the election. Thank you for watching our live stream on YouTube, on Rumble, on X, on Facebook. If you're watching live, please participate in our chat. You know that not only makes for a great viewer experience and makes it interactive because we're all a community and a family here, but it also actually raises the profile of our show so more people will join us live. And if you're watching us after the fact, thank you for doing that. Please go ahead and subscribe and hit the alert button so that whenever we have new videos and we go live, you get an alert to it, because our schedule over the next 2 weeks, as we're in crunch time, is going to be a little bit erratic. We're going to have some days where we're going to be doing a show when you're not expecting us to do a show. We're going to do some primetime shows as well, especially on election night. 2 weeks from today, election night, we've got a live special from downtown DC at a very high-profile election party in Washington, 2 blocks away from the Capitol. It's going to be a blast with lots of special guests, and we'll be live through the evening for you. So make sure you get the alert so you don't forget to watch us. Thank you for that. So yesterday, Kamala Harris goes to Oakland County, Michigan, state I'm in right now. All the cool kids are going to Michigan at the end of this campaign because she's trying to make the final case to those voters who, for some reason, haven't already made up their mind in this election. So who does she bring with her to make the final argument to voters? Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney. And she spent a lot of the time talking about how she and Liz Cheney are in sync and together when it comes to national security and foreign policy issues. This is the same Liz Cheney whose dad was a war criminal to people like Kamala Harris just 15 years ago. And is this going to make the difference in the final weeks of the election? Well, I'll report, you decide. But an interesting thing happened at this town hall event right at the beginning. Maria Shriver, who is actually part of the Kennedy family and was married to Arnold Schwarzenegger until he did a Doug Emhoff and got his maid pregnant. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Maria Shriver was the moderator of this town hall event, and as is fitting for a town hall, the people who were assembled on the stage around the candidate wanted to know when they were going to get to ask a question. One person raised their hand before it started and said, "Excuse me, where's the microphone for us to stand at to ask the question?" And, well, this is what Maria Shriver said at the town hall event.
You're not, unfortunately. We have some predetermined questions, and hopefully I'll be able to ask some of the questions that might be in your head. I hope so.
There you go. We have predetermined, pre-scripted, pre-approved, pre-memorized, pre-rehearsed for the candidate questions and answers. You're just here for set decoration. You're here to look good and sound good for the cameras. But this is a completely... By the way, I thought making French fries was a staged campaign event that is completely out of bounds for any political candidate to participate in. But here we've got a town hall where the people in the town aren't allowed to ask any questions of the candidate. Also, one other thing, and I got to get this off my mind before we move forward. Do you see the set decoration behind Maria Shriver here where it's got that slogan, country over party? I've been looking at this ever since they did this event yesterday, that whole country over party. And I know what they're trying to say, you know, forget about your party affiliation. You've got to put your country first, country over party, country over party. I realize that, but I look at it now, seeing this pathetic sort of weak performance from Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris, and they were so dour. You're going to see, we're going to show you clips, but I want you to think about this as we watch these clips and how depressing it is and how dour it is and how negative it is and how sort of despairing it is. You know, where'd all the joy go, Kamala? And I look at that slogan and I realize it's not putting country over party. They're actually throwing a country over party. We're watching them celebrate their little country over party. Hey guys, we're having a country over party over in Oakland County. Come on over. You won't be able to ask any questions, but you know, in fact, it's kind of a surprise party for the country being over. So everybody hide behind the sofa. And when the country walks into the room, we'll all yell, surprise, it's over. They're having a country over party. Anyway, let's move on to some of the moments where Kamala Harris really showed the world what kind of president she'll be.
And that we debate it out, have good, vigorous debates, have a good fight over policy. That's good for democracy.
She is the cringiest person alive. What in the hell were they thinking when they selected her, when they anointed her, when they coronated her? You know who's sitting at home right now watching this and saying, come on, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is watching that. Can we watch this clip one more time?
And that we debate it out, have good, vigorous debates, have a good fight over policy. That's good for democracy.
Honestly, I almost feel sorry for Hillary Clinton. Almost. But what's with the weird voices? What's with the odd facial expressions? There are some people speculating that she was drunk yet again. I'm not ruling that out, especially after you say this clip. And I want to keep reminding you, as we see the country over party slogan behind them, I want to remind you that this is Kamala Harris, the woman who started her campaign with Brat Summer in all of her TikTok dancing videos, and during the convention was bringing joy back to politics. Can you feel the joy? That's what they kept saying at the convention. Feel the joy. It's been a long time since we felt this kind of joy. I want you to now watch this as she makes her final closing arguments to those voters on the fence who haven't yet decided to join her joyful Brat Summer party. I want you to really focus in on the joy she brings at this moment in particular.
Let me, if I can just speak to what people are feeling. We cannot despair. We cannot despair. You know, the nature of a democracy is such that I think there's a duality. On the one hand, there's an incredible strength when our democracy is intact. An incredible strength in what it does to protect the freedoms and rights of its people. Oh, there's great strength in that. And it is very fragile. It is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. And so that's the moment we're in. And I say do not despair, because in a democracy, as long as we can keep it.
All right, I got to pause here. It's just, like I said, she could very well be drunk with this behavior. When you start your closing argument to voters 2 weeks before Election Day with, we mustn't despair. It's like, despair is not a word you should include in your campaign stump speech as you're trying to rile up and motivate voters to join your train. But this is a far cry from Barack Obama doing his victory lap before Election Day saying, we're about to fundamentally change the United States of America, right? We got that thing going on. Also, did you notice what she just said right here? They can't help themselves. She said, a democracy if we can keep it. Of course, trying to paraphrase Ben Franklin, the famous statement that he made after the Constitutional Convention when they emerged from Independence Hall in Philadelphia in 1789. And somebody said, Mr. Franklin, do we have a republic or a monarchy? And Franklin said, a republic if you can keep it. But they are so hell-bent on not acknowledging that we are a republic. They must insist that we are a democracy that she even tries to change that line and say this democracy, if we can keep it. It makes no sense. But then there was this moment too. There's more to this clip. I'm going to torture you. I'm going to make you watch this entire 2 minutes of drama queen, word salad, we mustn't despair, duality of democracy. Yes, you're going to watch all of it, but you have to see this moment right here that I caught. It's Liz Cheney. Do you see? Hang on, I got to get right to it. Right here. If we can make that big. You see Liz right there? Do you see her face? You know the old meme with from Arrested Development, the hello darkness, my old friend, right? And the slow zoom in. Used to use that with Ben Affleck as well during his interview on Batman and Superman. That's Liz Cheney right now. What is Liz Cheney's inner monologue right now as she debases herself and sits there in this chair trying to get Kamala Harris elected so she can get some position of influence in the Pentagon or in the State Department so she can start 2 new wars in the next 4 years? What she is debasing herself to accomplish here, what she is going through as she has to sit here and listen to this drivel, and she's looking over, who's she looking at? Her own aides? Her own, it's like, who in her chief of staff? She's like, I'm going to get you for this. Whoever got me into this mess. You know how, I don't know if you've ever been, whether it's in college or post-college, where you go to a party and things start to turn sour and you should have left maybe 2 hours ago. And now there's only a few people left and they've gotten really drunk and it's kind of a weird scene, but you can't get home yet. And you're like, how did I get here? What choices did I make tonight that got me to this place where I just want to be home and I should have never been, and no good will come of this. That's Liz Cheney right there. And it's a glorious thing to watch. All right, so now I'm going to make you sit through the rest of this. The duality of democracy. Do not despair as we discuss the duality of democracy by Kamala Harris. And by the way, that may be Liz Cheney's inner monologue, but I want you to know, as you listen to this drivel, this painful, horrible, political career-ending drivel that you're about to listen, in Kamala Harris's somewhat intoxicated brain, she's thinking to herself, oh my God, I'm killing it right now. This is what they're going to engrave on my monument just south of the Washington Mall when I am gone and they erect a statue of me, the first sister in the White House. This will be what they put on the side of my monument. This eloquent speech that she's now going to make you sit through.
And it is very fragile. It is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. And so that's the moment we're in. And I say do not despair, because in a democracy, as long as we can keep it in our democracy, the people, every individual has the power to make a decision about what this will be. And so let's not feel powerless. Let's not let and I get it, overwhelming nature of this all make us feel powerless, because then we have been defeated. And that's not our character as the American people. We are not one to be defeated. We rise to a moment and we stand on broad shoulders of people who have fought this fight before for our country. And in many ways, let us look at the challenge then that we are being presented and not be overwhelmed by it. The baton is now in our hands.
Are you counting the cliches and bromides that she's regurgitating? We stand on others' shoulders who fought this fight for our country. The baton is now in our hand. It's almost like there's a drinking game amongst her staff. How many of these can we put in there? You know, it's like if she says 3 of these stupid cliches, you win the $20, right? That's what it feels like. And she thinks she's being so eloquent and profound. All right. I promise I won't interrupt again because I don't mean to drag this out, but it is remarkable in American politics that you see something this painfully bad. And it's like watching a train. That's what Liz Cheney is watching, a train wreck in front of her. She's 3 feet away from the train wreck. And again, as is typical in America, this train wreck will not be attended to by Pete Buttigieg.
To fight for, not against, but for this country we love. That's what we have the power to do. So let's own that. Dare I say, be joyful in what we will do in the process of owning that, which is knowing that we can and will build community and coalitions and remind people that we're all in this together. Let's not let the overwhelming nature of this strip us of our strength. That's how I feel about this.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about this.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, also not to be mean, but why is Maria Shriver wearing grandma shoes? Anyone else concerned about this? She knew that she was going to be shot head to toe. But she's Maria Shriver, for God's sake. I mean, she's tangentially related to Jackie O, and she's wearing grandma shoes. Like she's going to go for like her afternoon constitutional. All right. Well, that's how you kick off a country over party. But there's more. There's even more. As if that wasn't the best part. She followed up the despair speech with this. It's almost like, you know how Jimmy Carter is constantly remembered for the malaise speech that he gave that ushered in the feel-good Reagan era. It's like she's giving the malaise speech before she even is the president. It's like, why? Let's just cut to the chase. We're full of despair. Dare I say joyful.
You know, everybody I talk to says, you know, I have to turn off the news. I can't read anything. I'm meditating. I'm doing yoga. I'm so anxious. I just don't even know. I'm eating gummies, all kinds of things, you know. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Not eating gummies.
Are we joking about recreational pot use now? Is that what we're doing? Is that and by the and again, this whole it's like everybody in this little clique of Upper West Side or you know Bel Air or whatever other ritzy neighborhood you want to point out, you know, white affluent women who are like, oh, I can't watch the news anymore. I need to go to yoga and eat gummies. It's like, why are these neurotic, borderline bipolar women who are on pharmaceuticals and are so sad that Desperate Housewives is never on because it was their softcore porn release on a nightly basis that they could enjoy as a secret little special rendezvous with their fantasy life? Why are they dictating how we live our lives, and for that matter, the curriculum in our children's public schools? These people are sad and pathetic. And I was going to say they need therapy, but their problem is they are in therapy. They should actually get out of therapy. They need Jesus in their life. Or maybe they should just be working out, not yoga, but actually doing something physically exerting so that they can actually boost some sort of natural enzymes in their body to make their brains healthy instead of gummies and, oh, by the way, Prozac. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off there, but it annoys me that I'm told by all the elites in the media that these are the women we're supposed to be catering to decide this election. And their only issue that they seem to care about is making sure that their daughters are able to kill their future grandbabies. All right, let's get back to this event, shall we?
There was a time when there was a phrase that I'll paraphrase that basically politics ends at the sea line, at the boundaries of our country, that there are certain things, in particular matters of national security, where it's not about partisanship, it's about where should America stand.
Every single human being watching this knows the phrase. Politics ends at the water's edge. Politics ends at the water's edge. Everybody knows this line. She's running for president and she doesn't know that line. And you know Liz Cheney just wants to smack her across the face. So she can't even get those bromides and cliches right. I'm guessing that the speechwriter on her team actually lost the $20 because he screwed that one up. Oh, speaking of Liz Cheney, boy, she looks delightful, doesn't she? Isn't she a happy warrior? I hate to say this about Liz Cheney, but, when you have children, I have 4 kids, and you try to think, so physically, who are they going to take after, mom or dad? In the case of my children, it is amazing. They are almost a perfect 50-50 physical merge of my physical appearance and their mother's physical appearance. It's a wild thing to see, especially considering their mother is Asian American. But if you look at my kids, you can sort of see almost 50%. Poor Liz here looks like dad with a wig. And I don't say that to be mean-spirited. I'm just trying to be factual here. But my God, did she get the short end of the gene pool here when it comes to, it's like, she looks like, if you said, what would Dick Cheney look like in drag? You've got your answer. But anyway, she also inherited his sweet, lovable disposition, because here she is making her final case to the voters who might be on the fence about who the next president should be.
I will just end this by saying, and I also know, because I have spent time with Vice President Harris, because I have come to understand what she believes about how she will govern, that she will be a president for all Americans, that she's committed to listening and committed to having viewpoints, some of which, come from different ends of the political spectrum. And if you think about how you conduct, your life outside of politics, how we all conduct our everyday lives, those are the kinds of people that you trust. Those are the kinds of people you can work with. Like if you wouldn't hire somebody to babysit your kids, like you shouldn't make that guy the president of the United States. I mean, that's like pretty basic.
Now, this is fascinating. Look at how angry and bitter and just despairing, if I can use that word, Liz Cheney is. Look at the face. Look at the face. I'll get to the babysitting thing in a moment, but she's trying to make the case that Kamala Harris is open-minded and she takes advice from various political spectrums, and that means you can trust her better, right?
You conduct, your life outside of politics, how we all conduct our everyday lives. Those are the kinds of people that you trust. Those
are they? I'm just curious. I mean, are the people that you trust in your life the most the same people who are on any given day, you're not sure exactly where they stand in terms of their political principles or values? That at any given moment, they may have first supported doing away with national health insurance and embracing Medicare for all and socialized medicine, and actually voted and advocated for positions to the left of Bernie Sanders, but then 5 years later disavow all of those positions and claim that they're in a completely different position, political camp. As somebody who 5 years ago said that we're going to ban all fracking and natural gas and oil exploration in the United States of America, but now to get the votes of people in Pennsylvania, claims that, no, there's no way I'll do anything like that. You get my picture. Are those really the people that you trust most in your life? People who at any given moment will get advice from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Liz Cheney. Are those the kind of people that you trust the most and surround yourself with in your life? Also, Liz Cheney said something there where Kamala Harris will get political perspectives and ideas from people who don't necessarily share all of her values. But here's the thing that we've all realized and discovered. Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney actually do share the same political values. One may call herself a Republican and one may call herself a Democrat, but that's just window dressing. That's just an outfit they put on to be accepted in whatever party, literal and figurative party, they wish to attend and gain power in. But when all is said and done, they're actually very much aligned politically, because their political principle and value that they hold dearest is holding power. And so they're actually very, very closely aligned. And then to the babysitting thing. I don't know. I think it's a fair question to ask. if you wouldn't hire somebody to babysit your children, should you make them president of the United States? I mean, if back in 1992 that was the measure, then I guess Bill Clinton would have never been the president of the United States, dare I say. And I think you could also make the same case for his wife, Hillary, in 2016. Barack Obama will set aside for a moment. We've certainly heard plenty of stories about him. And of course, Kamala Harris is now the person that is supposed to benefit from this old political yarn that if you don't hire them to look after your kids, then why would you hire them to be president? Well, would you really hire Kamala Harris, someone who's actually never had any real experience raising kids, let alone babysitting kids? She has none of her own. The only kids that she's parented were already relatively fully grown or mature teenagers and young adults, the children of Doug Emhoff. You know, the man she'd probably bring over to the house to help her babysit your kids. The guy who slept with and impregnated his babysitter, thereby destroying his marriage and leaving his children without a father in the home. Yeah, that guy. Oh, and also to help out, she might bring Tim Walz over. Tim Walz, you know, the coach. The coach who doesn't even know specifically how his own wife was impregnated with his children. It may have been IVF. It may have been something else. Hell, I don't know how the sperm got in there. I just know it wasn't the normal way. Yeah, now that I think about it, I think I'm okay with Trump and Vance babysitting my kids, given the alternative. The damage control of this appearance yesterday with Liz Cheney has been so extensive that our gang over at Morning Joe, you know, the really happy duo of Joe and Mika, I'm not sure which is which in this picture, to tell you the truth, because the shade of their hair color has actually almost merged now. I think they're using the same color when they go into the shower, just to make it a little bit easier on the budget. And they're both wearing old lady cardigans. I'm not sure which is which. I think Joe's the one in the glasses. Anyway, it got so desperate for them this morning on MSNBC that they dragged out the corpse of Chris Matthews to comment.
Well, Mika, I wouldn't think a few years ago I would ever be singing the praises of a Cheney member of the family, a member of that family. I really did not like the Iraq War. And I didn't like the neocons, and Cheney was leading them all. And he took us into that war, and it killed almost 200,000 people in Iraq, and it served no purpose. They had a bunker, a barrier against Iran, and they got rid of it. Anyway.
I love that this is Chris Matthews about to praise Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris for bringing Liz Cheney out, but he has to preface it with going back to how Dick Cheney is a war criminal and the most evil man alive in America today, which is brilliant because it reminds all the MSNBC viewers, oh, that's right, we're supposed to hate these people. Think about that. I'm going to let you finish, Chris, but think about this for a minute. Kamala Harris's final argument to convince voters to support her includes the additional hurdle of having to convince those very same voters that they have to stop hating the Cheney family, which is something they've perfected over the last 20 years. This is a tall order. You're asking a lot of these voters, Kamala. All right, Chris, go ahead and bring it home, baby.
She is a character almost out of the movies, out of A Man for All Seasons. I've never seen a more heroic figure than Liz Cheney. She lost her state probably forever. She lost her party. She lost her leadership in the Republican House. She could have been on her way to Speaker. It was very probable. She gave it all away in the interest of truth. That's what she stood for. It's amazing to me how few people have gotten behind her. But now one person that's got behind her is Kamala Harris. And those sitting together, those two women, as you say, on that stage is remarkable because there's such courage there from Liz Cheney. And I cannot say anything that would stop me from saying she's been unbelievable. And I think now if they use her for the next 2 weeks, I also want to say something about the Democrats. If you're going to use her, repay her when you get in office.
There you go. All right. So couple things here. A vote for Kamala Harris means a cabinet position for Liz Cheney. Chris Matthews just laid it out there for you. So buyer beware, number one. Number two, clearly this move to have Liz Cheney 2 weeks before Election Day be your sort of running mate here, as it were, as you make the final argument to voters, it is clearly won over Chris Matthews, Joe Scarborough, and Mika Brzezinski, and one presumes the people who go out of their way to tune into MSNBC's Morning Joe every morning. In other words, it is won over the people that you have already won over. Now, I'm no brilliant politician or anything, but I got to think in the final couple weeks, when you're trying to just sort of finish this and make your final arguments, maybe going back and convincing Chris Matthews and Mika Brzezinski that their vote is a strong one and a good one is maybe not the best use of your time or money. Again, I'm no expert, but I would think she would be trying to get, I don't know, voters who haven't yet decided, the people who might be excited or amused by you donning an apron and making French fries at a McDonald's drive-thru. Oh, speaking of that guy, he couldn't let this event go without commentary. Donald Trump, Donald McDonald, as we like to call him now, he took to Truth Social and he had a few words to say about Liz Cheney. Arab voters are very upset that Comrade Kamala Harris, the worst vice president in the history of the United States and a low IQ individual, is campaigning with dumb as a rock war hawk Liz Cheney, who, like her father, the man that pushed Bush to ridiculously go to war in the Middle East, also wants to go to war with every Muslim country known to mankind. That's one sentence. That's a hell of a sentence. That's how you open. That's a great starting sentence. You could write a novel after that. Remember, Liz Cheney lost her congressional seat by the largest margin, 40%, in history for a sitting congressperson. If Kamala gets 4 more years, the Middle East will spend the next 4 decades going up in flames, and your kids will be going off to war, maybe even a third world war, something that will never happen with President Donald J. Trump in charge. For our country's sake and for your kids, vote Trump for peace. That's right. Including Liz Cheney on the stage and reminding everyone about where she stands and what her priorities are, have actually allowed Donald Trump to claim the position in this campaign as the dove, as the man of peace, as the man who will end wars and support our military in the way the military really wants to be supported, by being used only in a dire circumstance where everything else has been exhausted and only the military can go and defend America and her interests. Otherwise, they are just there to prepare, to train, be well equipped, and hopefully never be used again. Donald Trump has positioned himself as that man. The Republican candidate has positioned himself as that man because Kamala Harris has embraced Liz Cheney, and it's allowed him to embrace that position. This is the most remarkable presidential election we have seen in America in over 50 years. There is a lot at stake in this election, as you know. But if you're worried about our debt, let's be real. Regardless of who's sitting in the White House come next January, the fuse on the economy has already been lit. 4 years of a conservative presidency is not going to be enough to turn the tide on the whole $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, forget about it. It's like throwing gas on a dumpster fire. You don't have much control over the election's outcome, but you can diversify your savings now by investing in gold from Birch Gold. That's right. Take control over the things you can control in your economic future. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife, and it can help protect you right now. Birch Gold can help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In the past 4 years, the buying power of the U.S. dollar has declined rapidly. But at the same time, the price of gold has increased by 40%. You think that's a coincidence? Of course it's not. Look at history. It always happens this way. Text Larry, L-A-R-R-Y, to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold. And trust Birch Gold, as I do, to protect your savings. Text Larry to 989898. Do it today. All right, so coming off the heels of that horrific appearance by Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney yesterday, coming off a huge string of polls, many of which we shared with you yesterday, that show all of the trends leading in the direction for Donald Trump now 2 weeks before the election, and coming off this photo op seen around the world multiple times 3 days later at McDonald's, Kamala Harris recognizes that she's got to really hunker down and just paint all of these these border states, the 7 important states, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, and then Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. She's got to just travel those states like nobody's ever seen. She's got to be flying all over the place and covering those things and doing rallies and doing town halls and doing interviews and doing appearances. She cannot rest. So today, 2 weeks before Election Day, what is she doing? She's resting. Kamala Harris, the woman who wants to be president, the woman who has told us that she's got boundless energy and she's turning on a page on the old generation of politicians and politics, the woman who tells us that Donald Trump is fatigued and old and incapable of keeping up with the rigors of the campaign, let alone the presidency. Kamala Harris today, 2 weeks out, needs a rest, and she's taking the entire day off. Here's how the news was revealed this morning on News Nation.
Vice President Harris, on the other hand, she has a busy day planned in Washington. News Nation's Tom Dempsey is live at the White House for us. Tom, that seems kind of risky for her to be stepping off the campaign trail for the day. Who will voters be hearing from instead?
Hey, good morning, Marky. Yeah, it definitely seems a little strange. 2 weeks to go until Election Day, and Vice President Kamala Harris will be here in D.C. with no official campaign appearances on her schedule for today. Like you said, it will be big names on the campaign trail instead, trying to persuade voters to get out and vote. And as far as who those big names will be, we're talking about former presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. They'll be on the campaign trail today. President Obama will head to the Blue Wall, holding events in both Michigan and Wisconsin, joined alongside Minnesota Governor Tim Walz in Wisconsin, where early voting starts today. Former President Clinton is hitting crucial swing state Nevada with a stop in Las Vegas, while second gentleman Doug Emhoff will campaign for his wife in North Carolina.
All right, now hold on a second. We got to analyze this quickly just for a second in terms of where everyone's going and why. This is weird. Like, Bill Clinton is going to Nevada to Las Vegas, and Nevada is known for like gambling, prostitutes, and late night parties and hedonism. So why in God's name would Bill Clinton go Oh, I see. Okay, all right, that tracks. Meanwhile, Barack Obama campaigning with Tim Walz in Wisconsin. I know a couple of things about Wisconsin voters. They love their cheese curds. They love their beer. They love Governor Scott Walker. They love the Green Bay Packers. And they hate everything Minnesota. No, I'm serious. They hate everything. They have to share a border with Minnesota. Minnesota is a punchline to Wisconsinites. It's, whose bright idea was this to bring Tim Walz into Wisconsin? Honestly, you do better in Michigan. Maybe. And then you've got Doug Emhoff down in North Carolina. I don't know if that's that. Yeah, bring in the dude from L.A. to come do a spinning class in North Carolina. This is pathetic. But the key here is, well, let's finish the report, and I'll give you my explanation as to why Kamala Harris is taking the day off. I do love that this. Did you notice the report starts? Kamala Harris has a busy day in Washington, D.C. with nothing on her schedule. That is busy. All right, let's finish this report.
The campaign team, though, also hopes teaming up with Republicans, like former Representative Liz Cheney, can help boost support among undecided voters.
Is supremely qualified to be president of the United States. I think there are sometimes some men who suggest that she's not, but if you look at her qualifications, there's no question. And that she's somebody that I know I can count on who will put the good of this country first. There's just no question.
Cheney appeared alongside Vice President Harris on Monday in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, hoping to appeal to Republicans and independents who might be concerned about a second Trump presidency. The Harris campaign has also touted that over 100 Republican lawmakers and their staff have come out in support of Vice President Harris and coming out against former President Donald Trump, hoping that will be a crucial block of voters come election day.
By the way, those 100 political staffers, Republican staffers, it spans back to the 80s, and some of them literally were interns. Like, they would fetch Donald Rumsfeld's latte over at the Pentagon, and now they're, all in for Kamala Harris. All right, so what's this all about? The most critical thing that you see here is that Kamala Harris is off the trail today, taking a break, resting up. We're told that she's preparing for a pre-taped interview on NBC News, and she needs a whole day to prepare for that. What's happening, and then the fact that Clinton and Obama and Walz and Emhoff are out there campaigning in her stead. It's obvious what's going on here. And we talked about this at the very beginning when Kamala Harris was anointed, coronated, risen up to the level of nominee without actually having to run in a primary and handed this thing on a silver platter. She got some pretty good numbers right away. And what did I say? What did I tell you at the time? The only reason why she's got good numbers right now is because nobody actually knows who she is. The more voters see her, the more they hear her, the more she campaigns, and the more media she does, the more they will hate her. And we have seen this transpire in the last 2 weeks. When did her numbers start to go south? When she finally started to do events, or when she started to do interviews, when she started to sit and do media. Remember, I was like, she won't do an interview. She won't do an interview. Yeah, because people around her know how unlikable she is and how phony she comes across. That's when all of this started. That and J.D. Vance's brilliant debate performance. That's what started this decline. And so what are they doing now 2 weeks out? I guess maybe they're doing a reset. Maybe they're going to rebrief her because all of the, don't be surprised if at this NBC News interview and also at future campaign events over the course of the next 10 days, you see a whole new set of talking points. Have you noticed that they rolled different things out at different times? Like last week, it was Trump is fatigued, right? And Trump is, he can't keep up. They've thrown that out now. Later in the week, last week, it was angry Kamala swinging her arm and saying he shouldn't be allowed to stand behind the seal of the president. That's going to be gone now too. Now it seems like, she's going to march in lockstep and do the three-legged race at the picnic with Liz Cheney and other Republicans. That won't last very long either. They're going to come out with something new that she'll have to memorize and she'll have to repeat. Gone is the I grew up in a middle class income thing. They tried that one too. They keep trying to regurgitate some sort of memorized script for her. And that's what they're doing. They're resetting that so that she can come out with maybe a new story at the end. But mostly the most effective thing about her taking a day off here 2 weeks out is that people won't see her. And that might actually help. But honestly, any objective observer watching this behavior 2 weeks before Election Day, and she is nowhere to be seen, can only come up with one conclusion. They are on the verge of a complete and total collapse, if the collapse hasn't actually happened. This move, in combination with the disaster over the weekend of her campaign appearances and the trend of the polls, 4, 5, 6 of the last 7 polls, all moving in Trump's direction, at a time when, again, 2 weeks out, if you look at 4 and 8 years ago, Trump was still 4, 5, 6 points behind, and he closed the gap in those 2 weeks. Now he's ahead by 1 or 2 points. So instead of closing the gap, he's actually going to stretch that lead, it appears, in these last 2 weeks. I mean, is she throwing in the towel? Are they just done? Are they just quitting? Are they just sort of going to play out the rest of the 2 weeks just because they got to put in a showing just so she can get a book deal afterwards? I mean, that's what it feels like right now. And Tommy Tuberville actually did an appearance this morning on cable news and was asked specifically about this day off. He's the senator from Alabama. Let's hear what he had to say.
Kamala Harris, she's taking the day off. She's going to spend all day just to prepare for an NBC interview, which will be taped. Of course, this would be like, you're a football coach. This would be like 2 weeks before the national championship if you decide not to practice. Does this make sense to you?
Well, I think they're just trying to keep her off camera, to be honest with you. She's been a disaster. Her poll numbers keep going down. Donald Trump is the Energizer Bunny. I mean, he does not quit. I mean, he keeps going and going and going. He's called me before at 2 or 3 in the morning. Coach, what are you doing? I said, I'm sleeping. What are you doing? He sleeps 2 or 3 hours a night, but he loves what he's doing. He loves the country. He's our only chance. We can't lose this. We can't have another 4 years of this nonsense of spending money that we don't have, of all the things that are going on in foreign wars. He will get us out of the wars. He will get us back to spending the right way. But we've got to get an identity back in our country. Right now, we don't have an identity, and the Democrats are all to blame for it. because they pushed all this agenda that is totally nonsense.
Yeah, well said. By the way, did I call him Tuberville? I do that sometimes. I know it's Tuberville. I call him Tuberville, I think, because as a Michigan football fan, we used to make fun of him all the time because Michigan hates Alabama, and the feeling is mutual. And so I think we sort of mocked his name. I apologize to the senator. Now that he's not the coach of Alabama, we should, respectfully call him what he is, Tuberville. All right, so what's really at play here? What's going on? Are there any other indications of panic over in liberal left media land? Well, there's this article at The Hill today. What if Joe Biden was the better candidate all along? What if? What if the man with mashed potato brains who had that debate performance in June, given everything we know about Joe Biden, with his obvious cognitive and physical disability that he's barely able to conceal as he continues to execute the job of the most powerful man in the world, what if that guy is still better than her? And I got to say, I think they're right. I think when it comes down to it, she's actually been worse with a fully intact brain, allegedly. One other indication that might bring joy to anybody who wants to see Kamala Harris lose, or for that matter, Donald Trump to win. Here's the story at NBC News, broke just an hour ago. Democrats brace for possible crack in the blue wall and signs of North Carolina slipping. The reporter on the story, Natasha Korecki, laid it out on X. Discussions of an anomaly with blue wall and not all states falling in the same direction hasn't happened since 1988. Concerned senator on Michigan. 3 sources tell us campaign pushes back and say they're going to win Michigan. Of course, they're saying they're going to win Michigan. There are warning signs in North Carolina. Of all the 7 states, that one seems to be a little bit slipping away, a Harris campaign official said of North Carolina. More from Natasha Korecki. North Carolina was always going to be a coup for Democrats and is still well within reach. But pre-hurricane, it potentially offered another route to 270 after combining electoral votes with Nevada, which Democrats also have to hold. Considering, though, early signs of black voting down in North Carolina, according to this analysis, good signs for Democrats. Trump is spending another day in North Carolina, indicating he needs to shore it up 14 days to election. Democrats have the strongest organization in North Carolina they've had in a while, but from a longtime Democrat strategist who knows the state well. All right, but finally, the other thing that's sort of making them concerned is they feel like either Michigan or Wisconsin could fall. Let me just lay it out for you again. Set aside Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin for a second. If every state falls the same way they fell in 2016, of the other states, that is, including Georgia and North Carolina going for Trump, Arizona going for Trump, and Nevada going for Kamala Harris, if all that, which is exactly what 2016 was, all right, if all of that happens, then at that point, all Trump needs to do is win one of Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin, and that's it. All right. That's if everything falls exactly the way it did in 2016. Now add into the mix the fact that Nevada seems like it's starting to lean toward Trump. So if the Democrats lose that one, it's even more dire for Kamala Harris. And add to the mix that right now, of those 3, the 3 big ones in the so-called blue wall, she's actually behind in all 3 of them. All he needs is one. And she's behind in all 3 of them. Just saying, these are all indications right now, including her day off, that makes it look like the proverbial fat lady's starting to sing. Now, don't get me wrong. There's still 2 weeks, and I know that we got to act like we're 20 points down. But in my lifetime, since 1988, which is in my lifetime, I can't remember a Republican not named Ronald Reagan who has been in this kind of position 2 weeks before Election Day. Every other election, other than 88, which George Herbert Walker Bush was really running for Reagan's 3rd term, but every other time, including 2000 and 2004 when the Republican won, and certainly in 2016 when the Republican won, every election, the Democrats have been in the lead in all of these battleground states and certainly nationally. Donald Trump right now 2 weeks before Election Day 2024, is in a stronger position than every Republican candidate since 1988. I'm just saying.
Quick super chat, Larry.
Oh, hey, we got a super chat. Absolutely. Thank you. Susan Cummings, I can only watch Kamala and Liz, only with you, Larry, and only with your help. Trump 24 voted with husband in North Carolina, October 14th. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for the $4.99. And yes, I know, I hate to make you all endure that Kamala Liz Cheney thing, but that's why I had to interrupt and mock them mercilessly. And yes, she does look like Dick with a wig, so to speak. That came out wrong. Let's just move on. Susan, I'm glad you voted. And, I spoke with Tim Murtaugh on my radio show this morning in Washington, D.C. He's a senior campaign advisor for the Trump campaign. He said they're still worried about some of the votes and the fact that there's no mail service in Western North Carolina. But he feels like the campaign is really addressing it and working with the state government. And he believes that those voters are not going to be disenfranchised despite the Hurricane Helene devastation that continues. And if you notice, the media is not paying any attention to it, Susan. It's disgusting. All right. Thank you for that, Susan. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Is that it? All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. All right. Let's move on to, where are we? Yes. Now, a lot of times in these blue wall states that we're talking about, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, the get out the vote, the organization, the let's make sure that people show up on Election Day kind of efforts are sort of farmed out by Democrats to major labor unions. That's why getting the Teamsters and the UAW and the Ironworks Steelworkers, all these other unions on board is a major, major advantage for Democrats historically. That's also why this year, more trouble for Democrats, because not only have some of those major unions not endorsed Kamala Harris like they did for Joe Biden 4 years ago, but the actual union members, if you pull them individually outside of the organizations and leadership of the unions, they're overwhelmingly supporting Donald Trump right now. Here's a look at it thanks to CNN, of all outlets.
Macomb County, Michigan. These suburbs just north of Detroit are a blue-collar bellwether. Joseph Knowles about to send a message, about to defy his union leadership, about to vote Republican for president for the first time, about to vote for Donald Trump.
And at this point now, I'm desperate. So I'm willing to try anything right now to make sure that I can fulfill my responsibility and to take care of my wife and kids. That's all I care about.
Knowles is a union auto worker, one of 1,100 just laid off by Stellantis, the parent company of Chrysler Jeep. He blames corporate greed the most, but doesn't stop there.
The second blame, I will put it on Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Why? Because of the EV mandates. I thought the Democratic Party was for the working class, people, the average Joe like me. That's what I thought.
There are more American auto jobs now than at any point of the Trump presidency. But auto workers supporting Trump here echo his attacks on Biden's clean energy incentives and his claim illegal immigrants are to blame for lost jobs.
But if you do it the wrong way, I think you should get round up and just thrown out. I have no problem with that because it jeopardized my way of providing for my kids if they take jobs.
Knowles waves off friends who call Trump racist, says he doesn't believe Vice President Harris is up to the job, and he spars with family members who say he should stay a Democrat.
Oh, man. I took it from my mom, from my auntie, cousins, my sister. They came at me.
I bet they do. What a courageous man.
Home County.
And by the way, such great dignity that he has, where he says, listen, I got to take care of my family. I got to do what's right. You want to applaud a father like that who does the right thing for his family, even if it means having to deal with, unpopular reactions from friends and family member. The EV mandates, it's such a great point. I thought Democrats were for common guys like me and blue collar guys. See, they don't drive electronic vehicles. They don't drive a Chevy Bolt. These EVs are all for the elites who live in the major urban centers or in the suburbs around it so that they can, feel some sort of self-gratification for helping to save the planet. It's not for regular folks, and it actually is hurting their jobs, right? Okay, so this is a great indication of not just how the vote is going to go, but I want to reiterate how the organization to get out the vote and community organize in these final days for early voting and election day itself is always manned and managed by these very unions. And even if the unions do, the locals, like I understand the International for the Teamsters didn't endorse Kamala Harris. They're bowing out of it this time around. But maybe the locals will endorse Kamala Harris. Well, that's fine. But when those Teamsters and UAW locals end up organizing and getting everybody on a bus to go vote, they're going to vote like this. They're not going to all fall in line and vote for who the leadership is telling them to vote for. So that's one major element of this that I wanted to bring to your attention. There's another major element, and that is the fact that CNN did this story. You see more and more and more of these stories, don't you? Where CNN or MSNBC, we went out to North Carolina, we went out to Georgia, we went out to Nevada, we talked to Latino voters, we talked to Black voters, we talked to Arab American voters in Michigan. We only found one person who was voting for Kamala Harris, or we couldn't find anyone who wasn't voting for Donald Trump. Have you noticed this trend from cable news? Now, I highlight it for you, not because I think this is indicative of some kind of landslide for Donald Trump, although it may be. That's not what's instructive to me. What's instructive to me is the decision that's being made in the editorial rooms at these cable networks. Let's go back 8 years from now. They didn't do stories like this. They didn't go out to those states. Or if they did go to those states, they would stay in the major urban centers and they would preach into the choir. They would talk to all the people who gave them the news that they wanted to have to tell their viewers in Manhattan or DC or Chicago or LA or San Francisco that Hillary Clinton is going to win. Those were all of the features they did. It was inevitable. There was no way Donald Trump could win this, right? So all of the features focused on the echo chamber, the bubble that the producers and writers and staff members and anchors and reporters all lived in these cable news stations. And you remember after the election, if there was any mea culpa at all, before they all shifted and said, oh, it was really Vladimir Putin's fault, and it was really Russia, 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 there was a small sliver of time where these people actually said, wow, we missed this story. We missed the biggest political story of our lifetime. How did this happen? How did we miss this? And it was because they were in that bubble. And this time around, it occurs to me that there is a very deliberate decision being made to not miss the story. I'm not saying they're happy about it. I'm not saying they're supporting it. But they are more and more and more. You're seeing this race. Now, by the way, when John King goes out there or when some other reporter or reporterette for MSNBC or ABC News or NBC News, when they go out and they talk to these people and they say, we couldn't find a single Kamala Harris voter, they still treat them like they're aliens. They treat them like they're morons. They treat them like they're uninformed voters. They're not educated. They're racist. They're biased. They're not being kind to these people, but they are covering the story. And I find that incredibly informative and interesting that this decision has been made to go out and feature a man like this and find out why he's voting for Trump, so that this time around, the viewers of these networks, they're not going to be surprised. They're not going to be blindsided, which is sad because I still want the image of all of them screaming and crying and yelling at the clouds the next day about how the world is over. That's something very satisfying about that. All right, one more feature here from CNN on these union workers.
Bill Govier is a 30-plus year union worker at Ford, and he has this side business cleaning car underbodies. When we first visited 4 months ago, he was a fan of Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, he will cast his third ballot for Trump.
RFK joining Trump effectively, I couldn't script it any better the way I would like it to be. I love the idea of Donald Trump being the commander-in-chief. I love the idea of how Donald Trump handles the nefarious characters in the world.
Govier believes more than half of UAW members at his Ford plant will vote Trump. He says Harris laughs too much, and he can't take her seriously.
So what is it? You're the incumbent who wouldn't do anything different, or are you the underdog that wants change?
By the way, I do love that. She laughs too much, and I can't take her seriously. So well said. Also, real quickly, just as an aside, as a kid who grew up in Detroit, that Mustang is so sweet. Is that and this is how Michiganders go about business when it comes to a classic car, because you know LA people and other cities who like to like pretend or get a kit car, maybe you'll restore a car. You get a Mustang like that and you're going to paint it red, aren't you? Or maybe black. But no, that ivory color, that is one of the factory colors that they offered back then, because I know my oldest brother had a Ford Falcon, 1965, I think, Ford Falcon, maybe 1963, and it was that color. And God, that's beautiful. Did you see that Mustang? All right, I digress. This is a major story. Union voters breaking for Trump. And again, defying their leadership. The Teamsters, I think, and maybe the International Firefighters and National Firefighters are the only two unions that did not officially endorse either candidate. Of course, Border Patrol endorsed Donald Trump. Law enforcement and the Fraternal Order of Cops endorsed Donald Trump. But of the blue collar kind of Midwest, Rust Belt kind of union members, they chose not to. A lot of them endorsed Kamala Harris. Those that didn't endorse Kamala Harris didn't endorse anybody, right? These members defying their leadership is the key story here. And Tim Walz happened to be on The Daily Show yesterday and was asked specifically about this. And I don't think his answer is necessarily going to warm any of these apostate union members back to their side. Take a look at the disdain and criticism from Tim Walz. The everyday regular guy who likes to clean his air filter and check his oil with his dipstick.
Do you have that clip, Larry?
Oh. I'm so sorry. Let me get that clip where it needs to be. This happens sometimes. We'll fix this in the post edit. See, all you live viewers, this is why you click the alert so you can watch us live. So when I royally screw up, you get to see it. All right, let's try that again.
Look, and all the unions with us, they've got union politics that gets inside.
Why have the unions, though, been more reluctant?
They have tough politics inside those. These are folks that are directly responsible to their members. And look, their members, some of them split off. How can you be with a guy who wants to bust a union, not there to make collective bargaining the right, not to make health care there? Some of those leaders did not show the courage they needed to. Vast majority of union leaders showed the courage of backing down.
All right. So those unions who did not endorse us are cowards and showed no courage. And those members of the unions who are going to vote for Donald Trump, they're uninformed or ignorant, or both. That's a hell of a message there, Timmy. I'm sure it's going to warm a lot of those voters up over to your side. Keep it up, please, especially while you're in Wisconsin with Barack Obama today.
Larry, we've got 2 more super chats.
Thank you, super chat people. Let's go. Oh my gosh, Ellen Collins, that's so generous. We really appreciate that. And I love your dog. Keep fighting. We aren't there yet. And pray. You're right. You know what? I am in such a good mood right now based on the news cycle and the way it's looking, because I just told you, I haven't seen this, since the 80s when I was a child. So I'm really exuberant and I'm excited right now. And I'm trying to call. You're right. Keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. And go to McDonald's, by the way. Don't you wonder what kind of day McDonald's had yesterday? Something tells me they broke records with sales, and they'll probably never tell us. Thank you, Ellen. We're going to keep fighting, and we're going to be doing it together right here every day. Thank you for that. And Elias Zamorano, $10. Thank you so much, Elias. I appreciate it. That really goes a long way. We appreciate it. For the rest of you, we don't solicit your super chats. We certainly appreciate. We love them, and we love to draw attention to them when you give them to us. We recognize if you can't do that, your support with your likes, your comments, your chats, and subscribing and sharing our videos, that helps just as much, and we really appreciate it. And frankly, if I may say, your prayers help a lot too. All right, let's go. A lot of people don't know this, but I actually used to work with Ben Shapiro in the early days of the Andrew Breitbart websites. We both worked for Andrew Breitbart back in the sort of 2010, 2011 era, before he started his podcast, before I started my radio career and my streaming career. We're friends, and we've known each other for a long time. And yes, it's a joke that Ben Shapiro always likes to mention that he went to Harvard. He went to Harvard, right? I went to Harvard. Everyone says, I went to Harvard. I went to Harvard. What people don't know is that he went to Harvard for law school. You know where he went to undergrad? That would be UCLA. UCLA, which was right in the neighborhood of Andrew Breitbart's home. Andrew Breitbart lived in Westwood, California as well, right like around the corner from UCLA. And so we used to go to coffee at the Pete's Coffee over there in Westwood a lot, Ben and I would. And of course, since his time with me at Breitbart and then starting his podcast, he's made a name for himself, not just with his great media presence and his media empire, but with Daily Wire, but also for his frequent appearances on college campuses. That's really where the Ben Shapiro thing started to grow. And one of his first early appearances was at his alma mater at UCLA. That's why yesterday was such an important day for Ben Shapiro, for Young America's Foundation, the great organization that I do a lot of work with that sponsors his and presents his speeches at college campuses, but also for UCLA itself, because yesterday was the triumphant return of Ben Shapiro to the Westwood campus of the Bruins. And it was important also because we're less than a year after the horrific, disgusting, despicable, dirtbag, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, Jew-hating protests that took over the UCLA campus. You'll remember they camped out there. They had tents. They wouldn't let Jewish students cross campus or enter certain buildings because they're so hateful, so anti-Semitic, and were carrying the water for Hamas terrorists. All of that made for the perfect storm last night of Ben Shapiro's return. And true to form, like Young America's Foundation always does when people give presentations either at college campuses or at their locations in Washington, D.C. or Santa Barbara at the Reagan Ranch, the speaker, the featured speaker, gives an address for about 30 or 40 minutes, and then they open up the microphone to take questions. And Ben Shapiro is better than anyone at taking these questions. And he got a question that I suspect he was waiting for from one of those very same students who support Hamas. Watch this. Watch Ben Shapiro, the master at work.
As an American Jew, how can you continue to condone the actions of the Israeli government, condoned by the U.S. government, in the Gaza Strip, where over 40,000 people have died, including Palestinians and Israelis, and large numbers of children and civilians? How can you continue to condone those actions?
Okay, hold on. I want to correct you. I don't just condone the actions of the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israeli government. I celebrate and laud them. I'm not morally apathetic about what's happening. On October 7th, Hamas launched the most deadly war on Jews since the Holocaust. They killed 1,200 innocent people. They took 250 hostages. 100 of them are still being held hostage. I know members of families of hostages who are still being held, American citizens. Hamas could end this war today by surrendering. They've chosen not to surrender. Instead, they spent billions of dollars building terror tunnels below civilian areas. It is not incumbent on the Israeli government to surrender just because terrorists are evil enough to hide behind civilians. The Israeli government has gone through such extraordinary efforts not to kill civilians that it has managed the best civilian to terrorist kill ratio in the history of urban warfare, and it is not close.
The social media platform that you're watching us on right now, it doesn't matter which one it is. I assure you that there are videos. It is replete with videos with headlines like Ben Shapiro destroys libtard questioner at college campus event, right? They're great. They're addictive. They're almost as fun to watch, those videos. They're almost as fun to watch as the election night coverage from 2016 when everybody melts down on the set of CNN and MSNBC and ABC. They're great. And I don't know about you, but I usually click from one to the other to the other. They're presented well. And if there really is something cathartic to see Ben take one of these, sadly unintelligent but college educated kids who think they know everything and try to challenge conservative positions with their liberal orthodoxy and then end up in a heaping sweaty mess on the ground. It's fantastic. And that's why I love Ben, and that's why Ben is so great at it. But this one cuts a little deeper, because this isn't just about, economic policies or transgender agenda or gay marriage or abortion, or this is a guy who is actually criticizing a country for defending itself against evil, against slaughter, against rape, against attempted genocide. And by the way, Ben is ethnically and religiously one of those people who would be slaughtered if he were in Israel at that music festival, merely because of the accident of his birth and the decision of his religious affiliation. And this punk stands up there and tries to say, how can you support? And so to see Ben handle this in such a fierce way and keep himself in relative composure is just something incredible to watch, by the way. And let me just say, I think they finally presented him, Yaf has, with a correct podium and everything, because everybody always assumes that Ben Shapiro was like 5'8", right? Everyone like 5'5". They all think he's very short. Ben is like 2 inches shorter than me. And for the first time at these events, he actually looks his actual proper height. I want to say he's 5'10", I think. I know his voice doesn't sound like it, but he's actually not short at all. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Personally know soldiers who have gone door to door in the Gaza Strip who have risked their own lives to prevent civilian death. Israel has complete and utter air superiority over the Gaza Strip. Turns out that Hamas doesn't have an air force. They just had a series of tunnels where they hid all their leadership while their people suffered, after their people voted for them, and then they effectively established a dictatorship over the course of the last 20 years. Israel, with their complete air superiority, certainly would have had the ability to commit full-scale human atrocities had they wanted to. They have complete air superiority. They could have used F-35s and simply turned the place into a parking lot. They did not, in fact, do that. They moved vast scales of population. In fact, believe it or not, there have been more births in the Gaza Strip since the beginning of this war than there have been deaths in the Gaza Strip from the war itself. That is a very poor way to conduct a genocide.
By the way, I love that point so much, and I am going to be stealing it. Have you seen that anywhere? But again, this is also an indictment of our media, that they are so in the tank and biased on behalf of the Hamas terrorists and the liberal left in this country. There have been more births in Gaza since October 7th than before. And as Ben brilliantly puts it, that's a terrible way to conduct a genocide. I love that. I'm stealing it. I'm using it all the time.
Israel is being more meticulous in the conduct of this war than any army in human history, and certainly than the United States Army in its vast role in the history of urban combat. That is uncontested. What is Israel supposed to do? Simply say that you get to play tag, you take Israeli citizens, you kill 1,200 people, you hide behind a baby, you hide behind a civilian, and now Israel has to preemptively surrender? That is a great way to make sure that terrorists always win. What Israel has done ought to be celebrated by the Western world, because they've demonstrated that if terrorists decide to launch a war they cannot win, they will be eviscerated from the face of the earth, as they ought to be.
Do you not want ceasefire now?
I do not want a ceasefire until Hamas is destroyed and all the hostages are back. I want... And you know how that could happen? It could have happened October 6th. There was a ceasefire on October 6th. And then there wasn't a ceasefire starting on October 7th. And there could have been a ceasefire again on October 8th, even after all of the death. If Hamas had surrendered its top leadership to international justice, if it had released all of its hostages, and if it had turned over its rulership of the Gaza Strip to some sort of decent body that wouldn't have reinstalled terrorism at the top of the food chain. I mean, what exactly is the excuse for Hezbollah getting involved in the war? Hezbollah isn't even in Israel. Hezbollah has nothing to do with Israeli territory, and they've been launching 8,000 rockets between October 7th and now. Now it's more like 12,000 or 13,000 rockets, hundreds of them every week. What is the justification for that? There is only one way to defeat terrorism, and that is to win. You do not win wars with ceasefires. You do not win wars by losing.
In your speech, you mentioned that there are scavengers who like to tear down and there are lions who like to build up. Are there not some institutions we ought to tear down in society, potentially like the Israeli Defense Force?
I want to at least give this kid credit for staying in there. I'm shocked. I assumed after that last one he would have walked away. But all right. I mean, I'm sure he's getting some sort of kudos from his little coffee clutch when he goes back and they all high five each other and get a matcha afterwards.
I think it would be an act of the gravest evil to even make that contention, simply because the Israeli Defense Force stands between 7.5 million Jews in Israel and complete slaughter. And by the way, over 2 million Arabs and complete slaughter who are citizens of the state of Israel. The only security and peace in the region right now is being guaranteed by the Israeli military. That is the only force standing between that region and continued chaos. The destruction of the IDF is the destruction of Israel. That means a genocide, a true genocide. The thing that everybody likes to ignore in the Middle East while they're claiming genocide and while they are claiming apartheid is that there's only one area in that specific area that is free of one ethnicity and religion, and it is quote unquote Palestine, which has 0 Jews living in it. If you drive through the West Bank, there are giant red signs if you drive into the Palestinian Authority areas saying Jews are not allowed in here. And if you drive there without the permission of the Israeli government as a Jew, you will be killed. If you're a Palestinian and you accidentally make your way into Israel, nothing will happen to you. You will go back to Nablus in the evening. If you make it through the checkpoint accidentally, you'll go back. And if you're a Jew and you accidentally drive into Ramallah, you will not emerge alive. That is not, if we are talking about which force here is a force for good and which force here is a force for evil, there is no question what the distinction is. If we're going to talk about institutions that ought to be torn down, we should start with the legacy media, which seems to have radically misinformed you.
Well, and frankly, the faculty at UCLA. God, I almost regret giving 4 years worth of tuition to that institution for my own daughter's education, but thankfully she didn't go to the international affairs or social sciences. She got a good degree that can actually be used for good in the world. She got a theater degree, the School of Film and Theater. And anyway, the point is, I'm very proud of Young America's Foundation for bringing Ben back to UCLA, and I'm proud to be a part of that organization. And boy, am I proud of my friend Ben Shapiro. I'm sure you guys are already subscribing to his feed and his show, but if you're not, what the hell is wrong with you? Get over there and subscribe to it, and let him know in the comments why you're there. And I don't know, maybe it's me, but I may have sold him short a little bit watching him finish up that incredible response. I think maybe he's more like 6'4" or 6'5". He's definitely growing in stature every single day. That is it for today, my friends. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. We love doing this show so much, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you. Continue keeping your eye on the prize, focusing on that finish line. I told you I talked to Tim Murtaugh from the Trump campaign today, and they've got a saying now. The whole campaign is saying, we run through the finish tape. We are running at full speed. You know how when you see a race in the Olympics, 100-yard dash or what have you, and you don't let up and just sort of trot over the finish line. You are full speed charging through that tape until the race is completely and totally over. And the way our elections go, that probably means about 10 days or 2 weeks after Election Day. So that's how Trump's running right now. That's how his campaign team is running. And that's how you got to run. Full speed ahead, 2 more weeks, and then some. We got this. We're in this together. Let's stick together. Thank you for watching. My name's Larry O'Connor. Please call me Larry.